Has it really only been 2 months since we last chatted? Well, let's get right to it. We have a great season for you. We cover a lot, from mystical characters like dragons and gods to real-world issues like how sexuality is portrayed in fiction. We even blur the lines between fact and fiction and talk about how first responders would actually respond to an alien invasion. Of course, what's a writing podcast without breaking down some common tropes? We take a look at The Chosen One and Damsels in Distress. Then let's get speculative. What would it be like if Amazon took over the world? Or artificial intelligence? Let's not forget about world building, my favorite part of speculative fiction. We'll talk about the significance of taverns and the beauty of maps. And of course, who doesn't love a good fight scene? As always, I have to give a huge thank you to my guests. This podcast would be nothing without them. Brad Alice, Matthew C. Brown, and Bibiana Krall return this season. And I also want to give a warm welcome to our newcomers, including Nick Coveney, Andrew Dart, Odin Halverson, Rob Hart, Neil Holtschulte, Lucy A. McLaren, Danielle Orsino, and Thomas Slayton. Episodes officially come out next week, starting September 13th, but for now, I'll leave you with this little teaser.
Where does responsibility lie? For something AI-oriented to be admissible in a courtroom setting, you have to be able to figure out how it made the decision that it made. What's that based on?
I always knew Dumbledore was gay. I mean, his first appearance, he comes out in spangled purple velvet.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't have made him look more like an Oscar Wilde dandy if she tried.
And I think it's good also that we're seeing Chosen One figures from like marginalized groups more and more. You know, it's all very well saying like the Chosen One trope is massively overused, but actually it's not for certain groups of people.
A lot of people bring up like the Outbreak movie. That movie is completely dramatic and does not represent reality at all. However, an older movie called The Andromeda Strain is perhaps the most accurate representation of what would actually happen.
A lot of action movies try to kind of copy the style of the Bourne movies. It's a lot of quick cuts, a little bit of shaky camera in there, which is really meant to kind of demonstrate just the quick and deadly efficiency that Jason Bourne has.
I think the dragons were always the precursor to Burn the Witch at the Stake. There was always a supernatural being of some kind to blame it on.
There's so much we can understand about depth of time from a map. Cultures and geography are intertwined, forming this incredibly rich tapestry.
If you look at sort of nerd culture, you have comic book shops, temples. These are like-minded people coming together and talk about things that they love. You have, maybe your yearly pilgrimage to Comic-Con.
All races, classes could be drawn to taverns. Obviously we've seen the old trope of the princess in disguise or the prince, and they've never been, but in reality, alcohol's the great equalizer.
Sleeping Beauty is a huge one. I mean, this girl is literally going to lie in this bed in a tower until she turns to dust, until the prince gets it together and comes to kiss her because she's so gorgeous.
I mean, in terms of solutions, that was always the hardest thing about writing this book and about talking about the book afterward, because people would be like, what's the solution? I'm like, I don't know, burn the entire system down and start fresh.
Speculative Sandbox is a volunteer-run podcast that relies on the collaboration of fellow creators like you. Join the conversation and participate in fun polls and questionnaires on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Interested in being in a future episode? Our DMs are open, or you can email speculativesandbox@gmail.com.